What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And this one, I wanted to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm break down what's happening with the pre-market so far, what's going on, some economic data coming out for today, how earnings are looking, and what under the charts are suggesting as we go into open for today. But before I break anything down, all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed up to 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and the offer ends very soon. Anyways, now let's break down what's happening with the market. So looking at SPY, we look pretty decent right now. We have a nice inverse head and shoulders like structure that's trying to develop. We're going to be watching to see how well it could hold this 496 support. If we do end up coming back down below this to fill this gap down here, are we going to come back up and try to break above 496? If we end up achieving that, if we end up getting a nice break and we keep holding this, there's a very good chance that it will eventually try to rebound and the market could follow this squeeze-like move. But we're going to be watching these levels very, very carefully. I'll be breaking more details down about this in just a couple of minutes. Let's first talk about this right here. So, what's happening with the data affecting the markets? We have Goolsby, from the Fed giving a speech at about 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And besides that, we just have a couple more Fed speakers later on from Barr and Bostic. There's not really anything else affecting the market much for today. I'm not really seeing anything too crazy. Well, I do see the 17-week bill auction at 11:30 a.m., but besides that, everything is very, very minor. Nothing very crazy is coming out for today. But for tomorrow, we have more manufacturing numbers, more job numbers, so more data comes out tomorrow. For today, it's going to be a quiet data day. A couple of things to know about the market is we had the biggest drop since March of 2023 in the Dow and also the S&P 500. Nasdaq also didn't do as well. That's because we got a hot inflationary report as core CPI saw quite a bit of an increase. But as the market drops so hard, when the market drops too hard too fast, generally when there's still buyers present, they will try to defend. That's what we're starting to see right now. We're seeing some buyers trying to defend the S&P 500, trying to defend other stocks out there, and we'll be watching to see how well they end up performing. Now, inflation is sticking around like a bad X, if you want to go that route, because you have to remember inflation tends to be very, very sticky. Don't forget about that. It tends to be very, very sticky. This is what makes it very difficult for the Fed. Shelter prices rose up by 0.6%, and we saw other sectors kind of like inflating it right back up. Now, with that happening, it's very important to be very careful with the way in which it's going to affect the different changes. So it's very important to be very patient with this, and we'll have to see how the Fed responds to this, especially for today. Paramount Global is laying off hundreds of employees. Bob Bakish, the CEO, basically came out and said that with these layoffs coming, it's going to be very important for them to cut expenditures. And they do wish what's best for their employees, but this is important for them with these changes. And last but not least, Lyft had a big error after the bell Tuesday. Its finance chief acknowledged in an earnings call and that the rideshare company initially misstated its margin expansion, and that indicated a 500 basis points, 5% growth for 2024. But they clarified it's actually going to be a 50 basis points, or 0.5% growth so far. So that's very important. Right now, we're actually going to be watching to see how things change for them. There was a little mistake made, but things are fine now since they clarified what they said. And with that being said, what's going on with earnings? This morning we had Barrick and also Sony. We have very, very minor ones for today, but then tomorrow's when we have DraftKings, Coinbase, and Roku, and more serious ones. Barrick, it basically did decent when it comes to its earnings, and revenues expected to rise. And then also they announced a buyback of up to $1 billion in shares after earnings came out. So decent overall, pretty good earnings for them. For Sony, I would say earnings were kind of okay, so and so overall. But you have to remember that they're actually kind of cutting some of their forecasts, unfortunately. They did see five sales forecasts about 21 million units. They had record revenue, which is helping the share price go up, but they did cut some of their sales forecasts. They also mentioned that it's expecting to sell about 21 million units of the PS5 for the fiscal year. That's down from the previous forecast. And this happened after a record quarterly revenue all beat so far. So they did well in current earnings, but guidance is still kind of like cutting some forecasts in terms of their sales for the PS5 and such, and also because of other factors. So with that happening, not the best of news, but the share price is still holding up. And overall, I would say earnings were quite decent. That's it. For excuse me. That's it for the news affecting the markets thus far. Now let's talk about something else that's very important. Let's break down the charts on SPY. We have a nice inverse head and shoulders like structure. We're going to be watching to see how well it can hold 496. As long as we hold above this, there's potential for this to break out even higher. If we lose this, we could return to 494 and fill this gap down here. But even if we do that, as long as we hold above 494, we're going to be fine. So whether we hold 496 or 494, we're fine. We can always rebound. We have this big gap to fill on SPY all the way up to the 500 plus area. So there's a good chance this thing could push higher to fill that gap. In order for this to happen, we have to see how well it holds these levels. If we lose 494, we turn a lot more bearish. We could be sinking back down to 492. If we hold either 494 and try to bounce, and then we try to hold above 496, we're going to be completely fine. For us to get a breakout, we need to see it try to get above 498. If we break that, 500 plus is coming, and a big move to the upside. This chart is starting to look like it wants to turn, it wants to reverse, but watch and see how well it could hold above 496. So long as 496 holds as well, we do also have 494 as the last point of support that's important. As long as we're above 496, there's a very good chance that we'll try to rebound. So watch for that. Will we drop it first and then rebound, or will we just rebound from here? That I'm not 100% sure about because we have some Fed speakers. But either way, this chart does look like it wants to reverse and push up. So long as we're above 494, SPY does have potential to reverse and push back up to fill that gap. On the QQQ, it's the same exact setup. It's getting dictated by Nvda. There are two possibilities. If we retrace, watch 429 as support. As long as we hold this, we could actually see this thing reverse quite nicely. If we come back down to 429 and bounce, and then we have this big gap to fill around 435. So this little drop and bounce like move is very probable. Watch 432 as resistance. If we break this, a bigger move is coming to the upside. Watch 429 as support, followed by 427. So how I'm seeing this, if we drop down to fill this gap, we could bounce and push up higher, or we could retrace a little bit more because our left shoulder is a little bit lower. If we do retrace back here, we have to get back above 429. As long as we hold that, we're going to remain bullish. If we lose 427, we turn bearish. If we close or lose below 427, a bigger drop is coming to 425 or 423.8. I don't think that's going to happen. My gut is telling me this might retrace to 429, or sorry, 430, and then bounce, or it might retrace to about 429 and then bounce and start pushing up into the 430s. It's got to be one of those two. I lean more in favor of this thing rebounding. The chart is still holding up nicely. For Tesla is showing some life as well. We do have this big gap down here at 184. As long as Tesla could hold above 184, this thing has the potential to rebound, try to fill this gap up to 188. So watch and see, do we come down to 184 and then bounce and push up to 188? Or do we just kind of consolidate up here and then push up to 188 from there and try to push up even higher to 190? Overall, it looks to me like Tesla could attempt to reverse. But for this to pan out, we need to see if buyers try to defend it. I could also draw out a Fibonacci retracement tool right here like this, just for extra clarification. Our 0.618 retracement is very close to about this 190 area. So there's a good chance Tesla will attempt to rebound here. We have a nice inverse head and shoulders like structure. It could drop a little bit at first, come down to fill this gap at 184 and then bounce towards 188, or it could just push up to 188 and 190 after that. Watch 184 is critical support. We have to hold above 184. If we lose it, there's 182 that's going to be coming, then 180. Watch resistance at, we have some resistance at 186 is very minor, but stronger resistance at 188. And overall, this chart does look like it wants to reverse. Either it comes down to fill this gap and then bounces, or just pushes up from here to 188 plus. So I'll be watching that very carefully. In terms of Nvda has a nice inverse head and shoulders right here. It is trying to rebound. If we break this top right here, we're forming kind of like a nice bullish wedge. If we break 735, we're going to be pushing up for 740 all over again, followed by 745. So the chart is looking bullish. We also have this imbalance to fill at 736. So it looks like it's going to go higher, and it might help the QQQ push up. We have this gap down here. If we retrace to about 725 and we lose this, if we lose 720, I would turn a bit more bearish, but we could retrace to 725 and then bounce. And then if you watch resistance, we have 735, 740, and then 745. So two possibilities for Nvidia. Either it pushes up from here to 740 and starts breaking out, or it kind of like retraces a bit to fill this gap, and then it bounces. So watch for those two possibilities. Otherwise, the chart does look like it's trying to reverse right here, in my opinion. I did call this out yesterday, and this is what's panning out. So watch this very, very carefully. In terms of Aapl, in my opinion, it's making an attempt to reverse. We actually hit 185.5, but now we're just not looking as strong. You could argue we have kind of like an inverse head and shoulders like structure developing. As long as it holds 185, we're going to be okay. If we lose 185, there's a risk of it coming all the way back down to 184.25 and then rebounding. But it could still be trying to reverse. Here is trying to base. So I think that Aapl is looking weaker than the market. It could retrace a little bit more, retest 184.25 if we lose 185, but then it could bounce after that as well. So look for a little retracement on Aapl and then a potential bounce. Watch resistance at 185, 185.5, and 186.5. So look for that. Do we retrace a bit and then bounce, or do we like bounce from here? We'll just have to wait and see. But with that being said, I just want to say thank you all so much for listening. Hopefully this pre-market video was helpful, and I'll be very much back in just a couple of hours to give you guys another update. Thank you. Have a great day, and peace out.